Are you someone who considers Predator 2 to be a lesser sequel to the original Predator movie? Have you ever pondered where things went wrong? Do you think things actually went wrong? Or are you the type that actually thinks it's a decent sequel? You know? That's what we're going to be discussing today. So join me as we talk about Predator 2. Geek Cabal channel. I've been here before. My name is Bobbie, and today we're going to talk about Predator 2. There's a couple reasons I want to talk about this particular moment in time. Number one, I saw a bit of a discussion about it in a Facebook group, but also Predator Badlands is out in theaters at the moment. Haven't had a chance to go watch it. Do plan on it though. Getting mixed reviews, but it seems to be making a decent amount of money, so could be good. But yeah, so. I was alive when Predator 2 came out, and I do remember most people thinking it was a lesser movie than the original. And I rewatched it after seeing this discussion and everything and planning for this video. I was like, I better rewatch this just to make sure my memory is clear on everything. And I watched it on Fandango, because I've got a digital copy of it on there. And whenever you go into movies on there, you see the audience score and I think it's the Rotten Tomatoes score, and I believe they were both in like the 40 percentile range. Now, I've always considered it a lesser movie to the original Predator, but not like 40% bad. Like, it's a watchable movie. It's not 40% bad. That's a gross overreaction, and I think there's some reasons for that overreaction, and I'm gonna talk about why I think it's actually a decent movie. I do think it's not as good as the original. I'll be clear on that. But I don't think it's bad. Okay? So, on the off chance that you have never seen any of the Predator movies, the basic premise is that there's an alien race. The titular character, the Predator, is an alien that they're game hunters. So they come to Earth to hunt people. They're headhunters. They collect skulls. So the original is an Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie. Honestly, I think it's really a horror movie disguised as an action movie with sci-fi overtones because of the alien concept. And one of the only mistakes I think the movie makes is showing the alien ship at the very beginning of the movie. If they were to take that out, because that kind of ruins the surprise for what's coming. I think it'd be a better movie, I think. But, yeah, so Arnold and Jesse Ventura, Bill Duke, Shane Black, who went on to make several other movies, including Iron Man 3, I think the first or second, or maybe both first two Lethal Weapon movies, also made the movie The Predator, which is Predator 4, and several other movies. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, that's a pretty good one. But man's in love with Christmas. Can't say I'm in love with Christmas is awesome. But yeah, so and that's Carl Weathers, and can't think of the name of some of the other guys on the team, but literally the team is just like testosterone squared. Okay. This is like the biggest, beefiest team of guys you're ever going to see in a movie, probably. And that's, to put them so that the Predator has a challenge. So that these are the kind of guys that you would think can handle the Predator, and then the Predator handles them. Its primary defense mechanism is the fact it can cloak itself. It can bend light, so it can become invisible to the human eye. And then it sees an infrared. So these things all come together in the end of the movie, for Arnold's big final climactic confrontation with it. So, that's the first one. Now, the second one went in some different directions. Let's talk about the stars here for a moment. So, our main character is played by Danny Glover. So, he's not the muscle-bound Arnold type, He's slimmer. Still muscular, but he's slimmer, This is early 90s Danny Glover. He was not yet too old for this shit. We have Gary Busey as the shadowy CIA officer who after the first movie and talking to Arnold and the other woman that survives, spoiler alert, they realize they're dealing with an alien, and they've been waiting for it to come back, for one of them to come back, and to capture it, get hold of its technology and everything. We have Reuben Blades, who is another cop with Danny Glover. Bill Paxton, also, he's a recent transfer to L.A. Oh, also, the movie came out in the early 90s and took place in the future year of 1997. Apparently before Judgment Day and Terminator 2 destroyed all of L.A. Then you have Maria Conchita Alonso as another officer. Was also with Arnold in The Running Man. Bill Paxton's also been in some movies with Arnold. Notably, he's one of the punks in the very beginning of the Terminator that he kills. Not the one he rips his heart out. I believe that was Brian Thompson. Went on to play Shao Kahn in the very unfortunate Mortal Kombat sequel. It's a real blight on his record. I like some of the other roles he plays, but not that one. I believe Bill Paxton's also in True Lies. I think he's the used car salesman that's trying to hook up with Arnold's wife, and Arnold scares the bejesus out of him. Bill Paxton does have the distinction of being one of the only two people that's been killed by a Terminator, an alien, and a Predator. The other is Lance Henriksen. So then we also have Robert Davey. He's a captain of the police force. I suppose I shouldn't tell you who all these people are. He is probably best known for either being one of the Fratellis in The Goonies. He's the one that's in jail that they bust out at the very beginning. Or he is Special Agent Johnson in Die Hard, the first one. And then Adam Baldwin, who is one of Gary Busey's kind of enforcer types. Let's see, he's been in quite a few things. He was in, Firefly. Jane, I think is his character's name. I never watched Firefly, I only watched Serenity. Sorry. And then he was in, towards the end of the Angel series, one of the guys that are working for Wolfram and Hart. Then he's also in Full Metal Jacket. He's with the squad there towards the end of the movie after Matthew Modine's character transfers into him. He's one of the hardcore kill 'em all types. But yeah, kind of quickly going back through Reuben Blades. The main other thing I know him from is Fear the Walking Dead. He's one of the characters in there. Gary Busey, he's been in all kinds of things. He's known as being a complete nutcase and has porcelain teeth. And his son Jake Busey is in some movies. He's in Starship Troopers. Let's see. I don't know what he'd be best known for. Point Break, maybe? I don't know. Hard to say. He's also in Silver Bullet. We talked about that in the werewolf movie category earlier. And then Danny Glover's been in all kinds of things. He's probably best known for the Lethal Weapon movies, starring opposite Mel Gibson. And I think I actually heard they're making a Lethal Weapon 5, so we'll see if that comes to fruition. But anyway, it's got these are reasonable star power here is the point I'm trying to make. And there's even some other big characters here and there that are known actors. So even a real big character, I wouldn't call him a known actor, who was in the first Predator movie. If you happen to see it, he is the gentleman at the I think they're mercenaries at the mercenary camp, who Arnold puts a bomb in the back of this truck that they're using as a generator. So it's just like up on blocks. They're just using the axle to turn a turbine. Puts a bomb in the back and lifts it up off the blocks and lets it just roll. And he jumps in and tries to steer it. Unfortunately, it does not succeed and gets blown up. Well, in the very beginning of Predator 2, he is one of the Colombian drug gang members, and he's there in their hideout, getting all coked up and everything when the Predator busts in and murders everybody. Then he falls off the building after Danny Glover shoots him. So, a little trivia for you there. So, I think there's a number of things that contribute to people feeling this is a lesser movie, and I think that it's primary sin, in most people's opinion, is that it did not have Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he's a larger than life character in real life. So any movie role he's in, people associate the movie role with him. You know, like you could have not replaced him as Conan in Conan the Destroyer, for instance. He's too intricately tied with Conan. He's too intricately tied with the Terminator. There's even, from what I've seen from the trailers for The Running Man, which was only a one-off for him and not a franchise or anything, the remake, which is really a reimagining based more on the book, is going to have references to him in it. You know, like, that shouldn't even be a thing. I mean, it's going to be funny, but, you know. Then, you know, like I said, the Terminator, you know, the Predator. You know, the Predator's a big movie. It's a big action movie. You know, he's the big hero. And then, you know, around the time this was filming, I think Terminator 2 was also filming. People knew he was coming back for that. And so they were disappointed that this wasn't going to be Arnold. They have Danny Glover, who's a huge contrast against Arnold. So, you know, that's a thing working against it. It shouldn't, you know, like an objective viewer now who's not entrenched in 80s and 90s cinema as it's occurring should be able to look past that. Because the rest of the movies in the series don't get judged based on that. You know, Predators, The Predator, Prey, Predator Badlands, Alien vs. Predator 1 and 2, like none of them have that baggage. You know, Predator 2 caused the clean break and suffered for it. Some people didn't like the idea of being in the city versus the jungle, whereas I think there's nothing wrong with that. You know, you don't just want to clone the original movie. Despite the fact everyone seems to think that really works for the Terminator series. If you ever take a really objective look at Terminator 1 and 2, Terminator 2 is Terminator 1 with a bigger budget. You know, like, there's some changes. It's obviously not a one-for-one, but it's really close. And that's because that series really only has a handful of ways things can go. Because what's it going to be? Just every movie Skynet sends another machine back to kill John Connor? I mean, at some point, those movies are going to catch up with the future war. The other movies should have been the future war. Or should have been Skynet coming up with a new objective. You know, something. Which is why I thought the anime series was interesting. Because it did come up with a new objective. And people from the future also came back with a new objective. So, really hopeful for season 2 on that. I think there's going to be a season 2. But I'm hoping for that. But yeah, so the urban versus jungle thing, it, you know, you've got to have your conflict, because the first movie established that the predator is not just drawn to the heat, because it's a reptile, but also conflict. And so, what are you going to have in LA? Well, gang war between the Colombians and the Jamaicans. And Jamaicans are led by a guy named King Willie, who practices voodoo and hides in an alleyway. I have no idea how the Colombians never just killed this guy, because he's just hiding in an alleyway somewhere. That's where the predator finds him. I mean, he knew where to look. But yeah, so you have this conflict, and of course you have the cops, and you have the predators initially following some of the Colombians, because again, it's a trophy hunter. It sees these appear to be strong men. You know, they're killing other people with reckless abandon, and they seem to have strength to them. But then Danny Glover comes in and takes out the last one after the predator's already dealt with them. And so then it fixates on him, because it's like, hey, I thought these guys were strong, but this guy just took them out. He's a prize. So it kind of starts circling around him, and you know, starts to take out people around him, until finally a final confrontation between the two occurs. And in that respect, it's definitely different than the first movie, because the first movie, the characters realized early on they were being stalked. Didn't realize by what, but they realized they were being stalked. Whereas here, it's more like, well, okay, this one cop associated with us, he got killed, but we don't know how. Then King Willie gets killed after meeting with Danny Glover's character. And so, you know, the other characters are trying to warn him, like, hey, you know, this guy's getting close to you. He's playing games with you. Because they think it's still a guy. There's nothing that's really moved the needle on what we're fighting is just a hitman or something. But there is a scene after several things have happened where he's looking in the window of a taxidermy shop, and that's supposed to be the first foreshadowing that he's starting to kind of put things together. And then there's a big attack on the subway, which was one of the moments of the movie that has a little bit of levity in it, where there's these 5 gang members who try to extort this guy, and he pulls a gun on them, they pull guns on him, and then everyone on the train pulls guns on the gang members. There's a couple cops there, and they try to tell everyone, calm down, we got this under control. Then the Predator busts in and starts murdering people. And this is the first time that the Predator has killed a bunch of civilians. Up to this point, he's only been killing the gang members and the one cop. So when Danny Glover's character gets there, the chief is there. I think he's the chief, lieutenant, whoever's right above him. Not Robert Davies' character, but between him and Robert Davies. And he's just exasperated. He's like, well, there's gang members, but there's civilians. We can't find Bill Paxton's body. And, Danny Glover finally looks around and realizes what the common theme was. They were all armed, just like in the first movie. So that meant they were a valid target because they could, in theory, defend themselves. They were a challenge. Even though Bill Paxton empties two magazines from his 9mm into the Predator, and it does nothing. So, I don't know, the Predator must be bulletproof because it doesn't have a bunch of armor once you finally see it, without the cloaking on. And Danny Glover was able to fire into it with a 12 gauge. I'm assuming he was using slugs, though. So, then you kind of had... The first movie has elements of this, but I think it's more fleshed out here, where there is a moment where the hunter becomes the hunted, because the government is trying to capture it. So they have set a trap, and the Predator walks right into it. But just like in the first movie, the humans make the mistake of thinking they've got it all figured out. So in the first movie, Arnold has figured out, Dutch was his character's name, figures out that it has to be seeing infrared, because there comes a point where he's covered completely in mud and it's masking his body heat. There's a rat or something moving around near him, and it blasts the rat that's looking right at him and can't see him. And he realizes why. He's able to put it all together. So from that, he begins extrapolating a way to lay a trap. And the trap ultimately succeeds, but it's clear that there were other things he didn't know. Because at one point, to get his attention, he throws a rock, and it bounces. But then the Predator is able to use its the aiming thing for its cannon to work the trajectory backwards to where the rock came from.
Ready? Yep.
And Arnold didn't know he could do that. So then he fights it hand to hand, and ultimately crushes it with a dead man. Was it dead drop? Basically a giant log. You hit the thing and then. Gary Busey's character, the CIA guys, they have figured out that it's got the thermal camouflage, the optic camouflage that can't be seen. So they figure out how to track it, pheromones, because it gives off a certain scent. Then they're able to figure out its pattern. It's coming to a slaughterhouse to eat. Apparently it likes beef. And so they think it can only see in infrared. And so they plan for that. So they're wearing suits that completely shield their heat. And they're in the slaughterhouse where there's different temperatures. And they've also flooded it with radioactive dust so it'll cling to the Predator so it can't cloak. But what they don't know is that it can see in other bands, which you didn't know from the first movie. You see it here in the second movie. The Predator starts, clicking its whole thing and starts going through the other bands until it finds one where it can see their lights, because it knows something's off because of the dust. And so then it finds them and starts attacking them. Takes out most of the team. Then Danny Glover busts in and starts fighting it one-on-one. Which is where Danny Glover is able to get the drop on it and blast it with several rounds from 12 gauge. Now in the first movie, the Predator had a self-destruct device that is basically like a low-level nuclear bomb. And once Arnold smashed it with a log, it was toast. So it arms the self-destruct, and then it can mimic voices, and I think it can appreciate what it's actually saying because it gets the context. Because Arnold, once he smashes it and it's there, he's like, what the hell are you? And then the Predator repeats that back to him because like, this is a human. How on earth did it beat him? Then, like I said, the arms of self-destruct, and he starts mimicking Billy's laugh from earlier in the movie. And Arnold can see, like, even though it's in an alien script, he can figure out that, like, it's slowly counting down, and that he doesn't want to be there when it happens. So here in the second Predator movie, Danny Glover has the Predator, like, it's like off a ledge, and it's hanging on, and goes over and activates the self-destruct. And it looks at him and is like, shit happens. But Danny Glover has one of its weapons, which is a bladed thing, and it slices right through his wrist and destroys the self-destruct. So then it becomes an actual fight to the death. And they go through an apartment building, and they end up aboard the Predator ship. And you see some of the other trophies that they have. Some of these like monstrous skulls. One of them is a xenomorph skull, which that is the genesis point for the Alien vs. Predator crossovers from the comics and the video games and everything else. It's from that one prop being there in that display. And so they fight. He ultimately defeats him on board the ship. And then several other Predators decloak. He drops the disc, the super bladed disc, and it's like, all right, who's next? Then a couple of them step forward, take the body of their fallen comrade, and they're all disappearing. And then the leader turns back towards him and pulls a flintlock pistol, as it was a trophy he had, out of his waistband and throws it to Danny Glover. And says, take it. And whenever Danny Glover reads the inscription on it, it says something, I don't remember the name, it says 1715. So they've been coming to Earth for a while. And so then the ship takes off, and the other CIA guys show up, and they're like, oh, we lost the chance. And Danny Glover's like, you'll get another chance, because he knows they'll be back. So, I think some of the criticism, like you've got the urban versus the jungle, but it's like the Guns N' Roses song, "Welcome to the Jungle," like they're talking about LA, and it's the concrete jungle. I think there's a Predator game called Predator Concrete Jungle. But yeah, so then the movie also had an expanded weapon selection for the Predator. Because in the first movie, he's got his plasma cannon on his shoulder, and he's got like 2 blades that come out here, and I think that's it. And then at one point you see him do a little surgery on himself. So in this one, Predator has a spear that collapses down, expands out. He got some kind of spear tip thing that he kills a guy with that they end up getting a hold of and have the medical examiner check, and like it doesn't conform to anything on the periodic tables. Then seem to have a different setting for his plasma cannon to not just be the plasma burst, but also like missiles or something. And then also had like a wrist-mounted cannon that I believe he fires at Danny Glover, who very wisely brought a bulletproof vest with a ballistic plate behind it. Then he still got the wrist blade, and then he had, like I said, the disc, which like it powers up and he throws it, and it just slices through everything in its path. That's how Gary Busey gets it. And then also a net that fires, and like it'll hit the wall and like start contracting and cutting into whoever is in it. And you don't see that one actually kill the guy. He gets shot by some stray bullets, but it would have eventually killed him. You do see a lot of these weapons show up again in Alien vs. Predator. Alien vs. Predator 2, Requiem had a few new weapons. So, some of the reviews, like, well, it's got some new toys, but, it seems like we're not really being very innovative with the movie. And I think that's a bunk criticism. Like, we established from the first movie what it's going to be. Predator shows up, starts hunting some people, and it's going to be a final confrontation. Like, we know that's going to be how it's going to play out. So I don't know what else they expected. And again, I think it all boils down to it just didn't have Arnold, and I think that just really upset people. Because Predator 3, which took forever to make after Predator 2, doesn't have those criticisms leveled against it. And it had some originality to it. In fact, what I'd always heard the plot to the proposed Predator 3 was going to be was the Predators are going to come back to Earth, grab Arnold and Danny Glover, take them elsewhere, and have them fight, fight other Predators, because they had proven themselves to be worthy opponents. And well, if you've seen Predators, that's more or less what the plot is. It's just it's not Arnold and Danny Glover. It's just other people. So who have not dealt with the Predator before. Although at least one or two of them have heard of it before because they know about the mission from the first movie. And Lawrence Fishburne's character, who is Lawrence Fishburne, should have been Danny Glover. That would have been top notch. And then the Predator is the Predator coming back to Earth, and we kind of going off of Predators, we find there's actually a couple different factions among them and things like that. But anyway, I think overall Predator 2 is somewhat inappropriately maligned. I don't think it should get the flack it gets. Again, I don't think it's as good as the first one. The first one is a masterpiece in action, in a horror movie disguised as an action movie that's really hiding a sci-fi movie. I mean, it fires on all cylinders. This one is a little lesser, and it kind of abandons, in my opinion, mostly abandons the horror concept and goes straight for action. And I can't say I blame them, because similar to James Cameron's comments about the first Alien movie and why he made Aliens the way he did, well, the horror is in the unknown. After you watch the first movie, you know everything you need to know about the xenomorph. There's no mystery left that you can really go with, that you can surprise people with more horror. So instead, embrace that you can't scare them and give them spectacle with action. And we had Aliens, one of the best action movies ever. So I think a similar concept was gone for here, but they didn't totally commit to it. There's still the Predator stalking people, the unknown, and trying to play up we've seen the first movie, so we know the answers to these questions, which is why the Predator doesn't spend as much time cloaked in this one. You see it a lot earlier in the movie in its full form. So there is that. That's always nice whenever they're like, oh well, yeah, we know how this all works. Don't keep giving us this gobbledygook. Let us see the thing. Try to be original with the new weapons. Try to be original with the government is intentionally trying to lure it in somewhere. It builds off the first movie. It is a genuine sequel without having what I've talked about here about the whole sequelitis thing, where it's like, quick, we've got to make a sequel. Just throw whatever crap you can together and get it into the theater. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, which came out 1 year after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1. Think about that. Think about any movie made today that in less than a year they have a sequel banged out. No, that doesn't happen. And so, it was a couple of years before this one came out. And weird personal note, I think I mentioned this in another video. Growing up after a certain point, I was able to watch basically anything. Predator 2 was one of the only weirdo exceptions. I had already seen the first one when the second one came out in theaters, and I had to wait till it was on VHS tape to see it, because I want to screen it first. So, because just in case. I don't know, I had seen the first one, and looking at it, I don't know what's really in the second one that's worse. Nothing's worse. There is a sex scene. The first one didn't have one of those. But, so, yeah, that was just one of the really odd things. Screen that, didn't screen Total Recall, didn't screen Terminator 2, whatever. So, yeah. So that's my argument for Predator 2 is not as bad as people seem to think it is. It's not as good as the first one. It's not what I would call a great movie, but it's a very watchable, entertaining movie. So, anyway, that's all I've got on this one. Let me know what you folks think down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Have you seen Predator 2? What are your opinions on the movie? Are you going to watch it based on this? Have you seen Predator 1? Where do you think the two fall? What do you think about the rest of the franchise? Have you seen Predator Badlands? I'm going to go watch it at some point here in the next week or two, hopefully. I'll have a review for that if I am able to watch it. Then, just, let me know, what do you think about the fact that the Predator franchise seems to totally embrace Alien vs. Predator and combining the two franchises, but the Alien franchise seems to not embrace that fact? Is that just weird? What do you think of that? Anyway, let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Sharing and commenting helps grow the channel. And I'd like to thank all you folks who helped us get over 600 subscribers not too long ago. Literally couldn't have done it without you. But, that's all I've got for today. See you folks later.
Okay, who's next?